Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing look at World Ablaze for No Step Back under the current, it's I think 6.7 World Ablaze for the current Hoi 4 version. We're going to continue this and continue talking about Rudolf Hess. Okay, USSR tractor experiments. Good. We're going to come back over to industrial things. Let's see. German Workers' Front, civilian factories. We can increase that. Yes, the DAF. No, the RAD. Sorry, this is the RAD, not the DAF. That's the DAF. This is the RAD. Consumer goods down. Construction speed up. Factory output, civilian output, construction speed. Okay, we're not going to do that. Research bonuses, support. We'll do this first. There is a reason Cubans flee Cuba and not the other way around. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think Cuba could be a really cool place. But it's not because of communism and Castro. Dad told me in the communist times you barely could get bread. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I know I was going to talk about Hess. Interesting story. I think it was Khrushchev. Was it Khrushchev that came to America? And they were driving, I think, around Texas. And they convinced the driver and the whole motorcade to stop in at a grocery store. And he went into a grocery store and looked around. I think it was Khrushchev. I couldn't believe his eyes, literally couldn't believe his eyes. And he insisted. He just insisted. After seeing that grocery store, he wanted to meet the man who was in charge of organizing, bread and similar sort of products. He wanted to meet it. He didn't understand the sort of crowd intellectual capitalism, of the idea of people choosing with their money of who to buy and that whole system. He was from such a planned commodity world that he thought the only way you could possibly organize economies to have somebody in charge of it, and wanted to know how you had so much whatever in a grocery store once he saw it for himself in person. But he explained it to him, the American, and he was sort of incredulous about, what you mean you don't have somebody in charge of this? You just let every company do whatever the fuck it pleases? Well, yeah. Well, don't people? No, because companies want to make money. They don't want, people won't starve if they have money. So yes, it was Khrushchev. Okay, good. Thanks, Nate. I'm going from memory on these things, so I'm sure I'm getting details wrong, if you guys know. So yeah, I don't wish for communism in the way it's been perverted. Well, but see, communism itself, communism is a dictatorship ideology. But even if you sort of take the ideal of withering away the state, no, it's markets. Communism believes that there's just the pie, and it's only dividing up the pie. As if a farm will only grow so much food, and there's only so much farmland. If somebody has twice as much farmland as somebody else, they're denying it to somebody else. But that's not how economies work. Marx and the communists don't understand economics and the way markets work, and that you can grow the pie. You can figure out how to do aquaculture, how to literally farm in the oceans with technology, and these other things that can develop, that it isn't a finite pie that's only so big. It's not that I eat twice as much food as you, so I'm taking food out of your belly. No, we can grow more food than we need to in the world for all the people in the world. It's effed up governments that make it so you can't get food to places, and there's so much more. Communism at its heart. Yes, please follow on Twitch, and if you're on YouTube, if you haven't already, can you hit that like button? It does help get the stream recommended out to other people to maybe come in and join us and hear me rant about things. Take the pies you make, and you should, yeah. And so, yeah, it's growing economies. It's growing industry. But utopianism itself is nowhere never. It's a nowhere never ideology. And if you look at National Socialism, and if you were to go, oh, well, what's National Socialism? They want to have the supermen. They want to have the Übermensch. They want to have the Superman. Well, isn't that utopian? Isn't eugenics, because it's a eugenics philosophy, isn't eugenics that you're trying to genetically engineer super beings a utopianist philosophy? And so how is that utopianist philosophy any less evil than, because it can't exist? And you're going to kill millions to achieve it, even if it could exist. You're going to kill millions to achieve communism, because unless you have state control, somebody's going to somehow grow more bread or create something and have more of something else and trade it for somebody else, and they will do market capitalism. I'm not talking capitalist as in some rich guy owning the big factory or owning all the land. I'm talking market capitalism and its trading, that you will always, you cannot, Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry tried to create a world, a universe that didn't have money in it. If you look at the original Star Trek series, but they never really look at it. Now, a few have iMud episodes and a few other things that do sort of have money in it, but he was trying to envision the world. But once the Star Trek people, and Roddenberry was a little bit involved with Deep Space Nine, not much, I believe. I think he, don't know exactly, on his death and whatnot. Definitely involved in the Next Generation. But when you get down to Deep Space Nine and have them trying to figure out a society in which is the civilian economy, you have money back in there. Now they do this gold press latinum BS and all this other stuff, but you have you always have an economy. Even if you have a replicator in every home that produces everything you want, somebody will create something somehow that somebody else will want and will do a favor for them, do something for them. Even if you have all basic needs, food, shelter, medical care, all taken care of, there needs to be a market society. And unless you have an authoritarian instrument, often called government, that is forcing people, taking away from somebody else to keep it even, you cannot have it. It just cannot happen. And so to push for something that will always lead to mass death of humanity, trying to implement it, is of itself is evil. And if you're going, oh, well, I'm a libertarian communism and don't believe in governments, well, then, hey, just go away, because it doesn't matter, because no one's going to listen to you, because we're just all going to have markets are just going to happen. So, but wouldn't it be because Zarathustra didn't need a god and clearly didn't need the father? Zoroaster, you're sort of losing me there. Federico Varga, I don't know, original form. Communist pies. What's the Dutch? I don't know, you've lost me there on Federico. Plato illustrated the impossibility of total control when Socrates best city collapsed due to the inevitability of unregulated sexual relations. Yeah, I've not read, I understand the basics of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and I know everything that we know of Socrates is somebody else's written, particularly Plato. Now you have Plato always writes the voice of Socrates, but you also have the playwright does talk about, and he lampoons Socrates. Who's it? I forget who. Theosoph. No, I'm forgetting who one of the other people that was lampooning had Plato up on a cloud in the sky or something, spouting nonsense. So, but it just doesn't work, and trying to implement it is and of itself is evil. Marx was wrong, and Malthus. If you look at Malthus in the 19th century, Malthusianism, they're both wrong their fundamental perceptions of reality are wrong. So Euripides, that could be it. That could be it, Nate. Nate, you seem very well informed. Good to have you here on the channel. Like to have people smarter than I am around. But yeah, very well could be Euripides is the name I'm looking for. It's been a long time since my philosophy courses. Yeah, it comes from philosophy courses and reading some of the works of Plato, Aristotle. Well, the stuff that they figured was Socrates, actually, copying, writing down what Socrates is saying versus what Plato wrote versus what Aristotle wrote. I'm more Aristotelian than Platonian in my viewpoint. But yeah. Okay. So back to the game and Hess. Hitler's come into the German Workers' Party. Changed their name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party and gave them a new flag. And gave Hitler a new best buddy called Rudolf Hess. I think that's sort of where I was going before I ended the last episode. We'll do another 5 of these here. And nope, we're not to the new year. And so Hess sort of becomes Hitler's best friend. I think from everything I've heard, read, whatever about Hess, is he is a deep believer in mysticism, in what's the other in not just the Thule Society or Thule Society or Theosophy, but in esoterics. That's what he's a very strong believer in esotericism, in esoteric belief. At least for his lifetime until the end of World War II, I think he is. Okay, we are now in 37, so I'm looking for. Yeah, let's do this, and let's do this. Mostly informed on Plato from Alan Bloom, Eric Volgen, which you can find some on YouTube. Okay, very good, Nate. I have not really looked into them in the last 20 or 30 years, so it's just memory from way back when. Which I think I'm doing pretty good for memory for way back when, and trying to understand and regurgitate their philosophical ideas, etc. for you all. So I have to leave for a few minutes. You guys talking about if communism is good, bad. Yeah, communism is bad. Some people were trying to say communism isn't bad. It's more impossible to happen, but I think it's bad because I think it's unnatural for the human condition. Well, we have, let's see here. We were to put him in breakthrough army experience. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We finished that battle. Let's help clear out Bilboa. And Anton Drexler is eventually pushed out of the NSDAP leadership, functionally out of the party. But Hess stays there. And for whatever you may hear and for whatever people may say, esoteric beliefs are at the core of National Socialism. And whenever you hear about the Nazis outlawing mysticism or something, It's only outlawing the wrong mysticism, sort of like outlawing misinformation today on certain or deplatforming certain platforms, like someone with some average Joe guy who used to be a MMA fighter or something, giving out misinformation. I don't know if the information that he's giving out is right or wrong, but they only try to get rid of the wrong types of mysticism. The Nazis at their core, and we're talking Hitler, Himmler, not just Himmler goes off, is one of the more extreme ones, but Rosenberg, all of these guys are mysticism people at their core. And okay, good. We now have, this is what I was sort of looking for here. Let's get that done at 50% off. Wanted to do that before. And there's this multiple groups of people. I wouldn't say one group of people, but they're all sort of floating around Hitler's worldview and influencing Hitler's worldview. And Hess is one of them. And I think Hess stays by Hitler because of his belief, and I think he is still, I think eventually they eclipse who he's working for, but in a way he continues the mission even though he's no longer, the original Thule Society people that send him to watch and look out, see what's going on with Hitler. He becomes a Hitler disciple, but I think also in the idea to make sure that Hitler doesn't betray the cause. In a way, now this again, now we're going really into gamer speculation here, but in a way to have the guy standing at Hitler's back, always patting Hitler on the back. You're doing a good job, boss. You're doing a good job, boss. You're doing a good job, boss. Uh-oh, boss has just betrayed us. Knife in the back kind of thing. This is my speculation on Rudolf Hess, that he is such a true believer that if Hitler betrays the cause as he would see it, I think he would do something about it. And so, and this is to the point of, and if you, there's the 1920, what is it, 23, 24 putsch. Sorry, people, I don't remember on dates. I know it's in 24. Hitler gets out of prison, but he's only goes in Landsberg prison. He tries to do a putsch down here, sort of trying to mimic Mussolini in Italy. Fails miserably, of course. Gets arrested. Getting arrested is probably one of the best things for Hitler, is because he gets his message out in the trial to the rest of Germany. Goes to prison, but sort of has his own private cell and their own private wing of Nazi prisoners. Another prisoner in there, of course, is Rudolf Hess. Now, one of the one really big Nazi that doesn't get arrested is Hermann Goering. We can talk about Hermann Goering some other time, but and it involved around this. He gets wounded in that battle, but he gets out, and his first wife is Swedish, so he sort of has a lot of connections in Sweden, and she was a very connected person in Sweden. So he gets out and escapes to Sweden. This is where he picks up his drug habit, his opium habit, because of being wounded. Like today, opioids. He got hooked on opiates at this point because of his wound. But yeah, that's sort of an aside. But he gets out. So a bunch of the Nazis get put in prison. Well, Rudolf Hess' time in prison isn't going to be as long as Hitler's. Hey, you get to get out. You're only going to serve 6 months. You get to go. Hitler's, been given 2 years. No, he doesn't serve. I think it's 2 years. I don't remember. He doesn't serve all of his time in prison that he was originally sentenced to. Whether you will call it good behavior or just, well, we don't really care, we'll let you out early. It was mostly just a show trial to punish you, to, go, don't be a bad boy for trying to overthrow the government, even though, well, communism is authoritarianism for sure. Well, but the idea, you say communism is an idea, yeah, but who enforces communism? So you can have capitalism and nobody enforces capitalism, because capitalism is a description of market activities. It isn't a I mean, there is a practice of it, but it isn't a unnatural or unnormal thing. It is looking at, because before, like, capitalism really becomes the word and the meaning markets, trading markets, you have like mercantilism, which is also market based, but it's based on limiting your markets for your where you get your resources from, where you're allowed to buy your made products. So yeah, both mercantilism and capitalism have markets. So marketism, maybe we could call it, is a natural fact thing, and capitalism just wants to go, hey, don't restrict it like mercantile markets. Let it out for everybody to interact with it, kind of thing. So there is a philosophical element to it, but and people also, in the philosophy of things, there's natural philosophy. And I often talk about, oh, no, it's not philosophy, it's science. No, natural philosophy is science. It's the philosophy of studying nature. But it's the study, your mind studying it, examining it, whether it's physical compounds, how they interact with each other, or how birds breed and nest and do all that stuff. So there's natural philosophy, but it's the human understanding of nature. It's the human observing of a reality. Oh, we're not paying attention here, getting our panzers over to here. So there is an element there with market capitalism, if you will, but communism is a philosophy of something that doesn't exist naturally without authority intervening into it. We implement communism, but they lied, and all they got was a dictator. Yeah, but who's going to enforce communism? If I somehow get two of something instead of one, and I go, I have 2 oranges because I have 2 oranges, and I didn't actually steal it from anybody, but I have 2 oranges. Hey, if you want to do my homework for me, buddy, I'll give you one of my extra oranges today. That's markets, and it's going to happen naturally, and it's going to take somebody or mow my yard today or something for me. I'll give you an extra orange. That is going to, you have to enforce it not to happen, because naturally you will develop a money system to trade resources versus labor versus everything else, and communism grows out of Marxism, absolutely. But there is communism before Marx. There is that. It does exist. Hello, the guy you trust. So when is communism anti-market? Always. Markets are I have this, what will you pay me for it? Markets set prices. Communism don't set prices. Yeah, it's a utopia. It doesn't exist. So, but okay, but it's an evil. It's a dark utopia. It's a bad utopia. Clearly. I mean, who would really want to live in? Now, I understand that people living in poverty, whether in 19th century Britain or today in some place in Africa, when they get explained how that rich guy who's driving a Mercedes through the mud in Africa, because there's some rich guy who whether through corruption or not, gets enough money to have a Mercedes, and he's driving a Mercedes in front of somebody who may not be starving, may be starving, but may not be starving, but lives in a mud hut. And someone explains to him, that's unfair. We're going to level everything out to be equal. And so he'll have to share all of his wealth. And so you'll get a better house made out of, tin siding instead of mud hut. And he won't get to drive around in his Mercedes. I understand that people out there will be attracted to it because they're in poverty. But communism is dreary for everybody else, anybody else in a successful society. Communism is a dreary possibility. Okay. Let's see, what do we want to do now? That is because we can get down to here, but I think researching there. Well, let's do area innovations. Let's get some of that. Okay. Probably still need more artillery. Well, we need more artillery, of course, but we're actually getting the positives of artillery at the moment. Good. Yeah. I think for a while it's artillery, artillery, artillery. Let's do 10 more of those and then 3 more of those. And we can also use some more tungsten. So, artillery, which I think will Mercedes guy that are responsible for your situation and they exploit it. And he very well may be responsible in Africa for the situation because there's a lot of corruption and whatnot. We need to get rid of him and level everything. Exactly. That's what they think is what that's going to be better. Mum Wild, what's happening would have been sooner, but the ice storm seems to be causing it. Sorry to hear about that. We're playing along and talking about philosophies. Marx got the idea because workers were exploited in a Kabbalistic sort of dictatorship. Yeah, people were exploited in the 19th century. Absolutely. It just Marx had the wrong understanding of history. Because Marxist history, I'm not talking anything about economics here for the moment. Marxist history is wrong. Marx is a Whig historian. He's a Whig history guy. Which, when you say Whig, you actually mean you don't have a wig, but that's another whole story. Get into someday if you ever want to go down weird rabbit holes. But Whig history, and you can look at reading Whig history, and it hypothesis that there's progression of mankind, that mankind is making progress, and it comes to today in modern progressives, which often are coming out of Marxists, maybe realizing that Marxism is a complete utopia, but is too afraid to use the word fascism, and they really don't want to have people walking around with black shirts and doing arm salutes, but they want to have centrally planned economies that are socialist in nature, so basically fascism, but believes that there's progress. Man is making progress from not just technological progress, but social progress. And I think one thing they would point to today is, at least in the Western world, is what had been a common condition just about every place that I've ever heard of it on Earth was slavery. Native Americans had North Americans, or let me change that word. Pre-Columbian Americans. That means people here before Columbus. Pre-Columbian Americans, whether in North America or South America, they had slavery. Africans had slaves. Mongols had slaves. Chinese had slaves. Europeans, Romans had slaves, often taken from Northern Europe. Everybody, now I don't know about Aboriginals in Australia, if they had slaves, if they captured people and used them as slaves. I definitely know most American Indian tribes captured people and had slaves. You're doing it before Columbus arrives. So it's not something they learned. Everywhere, a common condition of humanity was slavery. We, in the West, generally speaking, abhor slavery and don't allow it knowingly to exist in the West. Yes, we know slavery exists in China. It exists in Africa still to this day, including like selling people in markets that you can literally go in and find it, possibly on the internet. Actually buy them on the internet, buy people in North Africa for labor in North Africa, right? In former Libya, whatever you want to call it nowadays. So slavery still exists, most assuredly, but we now abhor it, and that is social progress. Okay, they use that as somehow the changing nature of mankind. I personally reject Whig history. I'm a cyclical person. I don't think the nature of man, I don't think has changed since the dawn of writing. We have not significantly changed. We are basically the same being that we were in Socrates and Plato's day. We have not changed. We have not made any progress in any sense that they mean. So Marx comes out of Whig history, and I know I'm using terms that most of you won't understand. I'm sorry, but it explains the ideas. Maurice had them. Yeah, okay, good to know. Down, he's meaning the pre-European peoples of New Zealand had slaves. So yeah, slavery was everywhere. Yes, hello, Night Sergeant Huntman. Yes, I had to start over because of things explained at the beginning of this. Whig. There were two British political parties in Britain, basically, Whigs and Tories. The Tories are the conservatives still of today, continuing on. Whigs fade and disappear, were replaced by the Liberals. And it comes from Whigamore, or people without wigs. Because the elites, like you think of Louis XIV's court with all men wearing wigs or whatever. It was sort of the common man sort of party in Britain, if you look at in the 18th century. But you have to understand what Whig history was, and it wants to view overall the history of mankind as a history of progression to improvement of mankind, not partially, but not primarily in technological elements, but in social elements. And Marx comes out of that idea of Whig history. And he read, I was in the British Library. I saw the desk where Marx worked in the British Library. I've been there. So I don't know I literally don't know all of the books he read, but trust me, I'm sure that because he was a historian as well, and it's his views of history. I'm not talking economics or anything here at the moment, but his synthesis, antithesis, and all this bullshit, it's wrong. He gets that wrong. Marx is just wrong on so many issues. Yeah, he looks out and sees that the workers are exploited. He's correct. The workers are exploited. But you're in the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. He does not know what the Industrial Revolution is going to end up being. He does not know about what the post-industrial world, like we are in now, post-industrial revolutionary world, in the technological world. He doesn't understand our cyber revolution that we're going through, if you want to call it that, or whatever. He doesn't get that. He doesn't. Fabian socialists are a bit different. If that's what you're talking about, the Fabian Society and the Fabian Socialist, they're a bit different. Than that, if that's what you're talking of, but so he and so he reads. Yeah, well, the Fabians come out of, instead of revolutionary socialists, that are, like you see in the Soviet Union, or in the Russian Revolution that forms the Soviet Union. Those are revolutionary socialists. Fabian socialists are gradual socialism, the wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will. Try to move society along to eventual goal instead of overthrowing it in a brief period of time, so that you hate pies. Well, I'm not a big meat eater. I don't eat meat pies really, but if you're talking like chocolate pie or pumpkin pie, favorite pie. Well, if you're talking like pumpkin, apple pie is good, but I really love like pumpkin pie, chocolate pie. Those are great. Those kind of pies are great. Meat pies, like English meat pies, I'm not that big into those at all. I mean, I've had a couple, but yeah. So this is all getting on philosophy here and everything else, but so yeah, he definitely, and sort of Whig history becomes the dominant view of history. Marxist history, I remember reading it's been more than 10 years now, reading a little book on a sort of overview of 18th century history. I got about a third of the way through it, and I probably still have it here. I don't throw things literally away, but I just threw it off into the corner because it was Marxist history of the 18th century, explaining everything in the 18th century as an economic reason for happening. Not that I don't even know that the author was like yay for socialism or anything like that, but he saw everything through Marxist eyes, as in the economics is why things happen. The reason why things happen. I do not believe economics may allow things to happen, but I think I don't think like National Socialism, the racist elements, has anything to do with economics. I believe it's a belief system, and Germany's industrial power allows them to, go mess with their neighbors, have a world war. But so economics allows Hitler to do what he does, but doesn't cause Hitler to do what he does. So, so that's how Marxism has influenced, but he comes out of the Whig history view of history, as opposed to, I believe it's cyclical. I believe things are, you get a consolidation like the Roman Empire, like America, like that, and then eventually you'll have a collapse of what used to would be called empires. In any real definition of the term, I'm not talking about the overseas empire, if you will, of America, bases all over the world and puppets or whatever. I'm talking about the internal. Eventually, America is going to collapse. I hope it doesn't happen in my lifetime. I hope it doesn't happen for a few hundreds of years. But eventually, there's no system that's going to be forever stable enough that you aren't going to have another civil war. You're not going to have another breakup of what's going to happen here. So I'm a cyclical. You'll have consolidations of culture and power and whatnot, and then you'll it's sort of the old saying, tough times make hard men make easy times make men weak men make hard times, because hard times for somebody else will come there. And so you have that. Now, I don't think we're quite that it's going to happen kind of soon. I don't think so. I may be entirely wrong. Hey Eric, how you doing? But I do think it is cyclical, and that is my take, and why I think Marx is wrong. That explains things through economics, explains things through progressive Whig history, and his solutions are wrong. He can identify some of the problems in society. But there's a lot of elites in Britain, and I've studied like the 18th century in pretty damn detailed depth. And at the beginning of the 18th century, you have the elites, at least in certain parts of Britain, and definitely if you're talking about the 17th century in Britain, the elites They did not exploit people. Their most valuable resource was their people. Their people. Whether it's an Irish or Scottish tribe, with a chief, or whether it was some great landowner. It wasn't so much his land, it was his people. They were the valuable thing. The workers were the valuable, the cherished thing, because if you didn't have workers, that field wasn't going to get plowed. It wasn't going to be useful. And they cherished their people. They nurtured their people. Now, this is after a collapse of society of the Roman world. So you have a hierarchical society, and it's different than we have today, absolutely. And you have that. But they are forced, and I specifically know of the Highlands of Scotland, they are forced to get rid of their people because of the changing economies, because they literally can't feed these people anymore. Now, some of the more kind ones in the clearances, clearing the people off the land, because the land can be made to be profitable, but these people cannot, almost literally because of some improving elements, cannot feed themselves off this land anymore. Some of them actually buy land like in Canada, pay for ships, and put all these people on ships and send them to Canada. Others literally come in, tell them to get out of their house. If they don't get out of their house, they pull them out of their house physically. They burn their roof. Their walls are made of stone, so they push their walls in. They literally do that to clear the people. It's called the clearances. That's at the two extremes. Most are somewhere in the middle. And the people flood into the new towns, the new cities. What had Glasgow had been a town, but the industrial cities. And in some ways, things are better. But in some ways, they're god-awful. And because you have this moving of people of this new industrializing world, Marx grows up in this world where labor is the disposable thing, where before the labor was a craftsman, whether the craftsman of a farmer or craftsman of a woodworker or a blacksmith, the labor was the thing. An experienced miner who could go in and tunnel in like the 17th and 14th century. Yeah, we today, that would be like a harsh job, but man, he was an expert at doing that mining, and a very valuable thing. You didn't want something to go wrong with your miners, and you made sure your miners were taken care of. You get into the 19th century, it's industry, it's machines. Labor is the disposable thing. And so it's really hard on the workers then, and that is when Marx and Malthus both view the world, and that is why they have such a bad and skewed vision of the world, and so dark. When does this stream end? Well, within an hour or so it will be over. Average lifespan of a worker at a water wheel text mill, 25 years old. Yeah, and I'm not sure, now part of that is, okay, you have to look at that. 25 years old. So, and if we're looking at England, because I know England better than other parts. Okay, average lifespan of a worker at 25 years old. Right. Well, why is it 25 years old? Well, because so many people died at 6 months. So many people died at 1 year. So many people died at 2 years. Because if they got a scratch and they got tetanus, which we have tetanus shots for, rusty nail or something, they will die. Okay, there was it wasn't that they were malnourished or weren't given access to medicine. They would just literally get a disease, drink bad water, whatever it might be a baby and play with scissors and stab themselves. I don't know. So not necessarily a nefarious element of somebody old or somebody elite back in the past. It just, people died at 1 year old. Okay, part of it was, if you look at, because there were women in the workforce, is women would die because of childbirth, because childbirth was dangerous. Even if the baby lived, there was infection and all that. So that drills into your 25 lifespan of a worker at a watermill, 25 years. So you have to put that into your average lifespan. So most people that made it to, say, 20 years old or 18 years old would make it to the 35, 40-year-old, 45-year-old thing. So always be careful, Mom, about using some of those data points. And you have to understand, not that they're untrue, but they're not necessarily... Hitler was born right around here, I believe, in Austria. So yeah, and it wasn't the fault of government or society. It was just the lack of medical knowledge for most of it. And yeah, people lifted too heavy things and messed their back up from doing it repeatedly and other things, and they didn't have a social welfare system to take care of people with bad backs, so they continued to work, because if they didn't work, they didn't get food, and so they, crippled themselves. Absolutely. I mean, that happened, no doubt. No doubt. But that was the world back then. It wasn't the fault of a government or society or anything. It was just the way things were. Yeah, no, he was born not in Linz, but sort of right around this area, the border region, sort of near Linz, as well, sort of, Salzburg, but sort of in small towns, sort of somewhere in here. Notice why he puts his house in this part of Germany when he chooses to do that. An Obersalzburg, above Salzburg. Yeah, they would do that most assuredly because that was a valuable commodity. People wanted to use the fertilizer for sure. And yes, we're just going over to subs and more subs. More subs, so I don't have to think about this, just keep it as infinity because we just want subs and more subs. There we go. And yes, I am so glad I live in I'm so glad I live in a world, and I know I live in the first world, very true, but I live in a world with electricity and indoor plumbing. Those two things, no matter how good, I'd like to visit some of the old world, for sure, but living in a world without indoor plumbing, pooping in a pot, and then putting that in the corner, or throwing it out your window or something, not having to do that, and living in a world with electricity, even pre-computer electricity, because I grew up in a world with pre-computer electricity in essence, in a functional way for most every person. I mean, yeah, I know big computers existed when I was younger, but an electrified plumbing world, I am so glad I live in. Yeah, it might be, but I'm just not really going to do much research. Okay, we are here now. Finally. Okay, let's attack here because they're attacking, so we're going to attack the attackers. But they're attacking a different province. For all those watching, this is not going to be a serious playthrough in that I am more exploring the mod and playing than I am, like I'm not worrying about spies, and I'm going to do minimal naval stuff. Yeah, horse poop. Now, horse poop is not near, because I grew up a bit on a ranch. My grandfather had a ranch. I mean, I didn't live there full time, but I visited a lot, and for days at a time and a few times weeks at a time. horse poop isn't nearly, or cow poop isn't nearly offensive as meat eater poop. So vegetarian poop doesn't smell nearly as bad as meat eating poop, at least to me. So, but yeah, horse poop was definitely a thing for sure. Now, I grew up on a ranch that was, you wouldn't, it's not desert as in sand dunes and whatever else, but it's sort of sagebrush, and it was very dry. Now, there were streams around for sure, where I was, and ponds, what most of you would think of as ponds. We called them lakes. But, and so, there was green grass in some areas full. Well, not in the winter, but the rest of the time because there was enough water. But the sagebrush is around, and there was cactuses and yucca plants and whatnot. So most of the animal poop would dry out pretty quickly. So you didn't worry about stepping in it because it wasn't gicky or yucky unless it was like just a day or two fresh. So walking through a field. So unless you happen to step in something fresh, it was just stepping on clumps of, hardened earth, if you will. So I grew up around that quite a bit, and don't have a problem with it. I don't know how much I would maybe have greater problems in a moister environment in Europe, say, or something. See, the three things I'm going to sort of test out with this mod, hopefully, if I can get far enough in it without having to restart again. I want to test out the invasion of France. That's important. How that goes. Test out how sort of North Africa goes. And test out how the Soviet invasion of the Soviet Union goes. Those are the three things I'm sort of wanting to test out, and I will evaluate once I sort of get there and have a decent shot at it. That sort of evaluates to some degree the mod for me. Come on, Spain, bring in at least one or two other divisions to help me out. Yeah, seaplanes. See, that's why I like seaplanes, because they can help influence, like, dominate some of the area over here from land-based needs. And so I don't know how much surface fleet I'm going to try to get into the Mediterranean. I might try to get, if I get Italy as an ally before the war breaks out, I might try to get some subs and whatnot into the Mediterranean. How are we doing it? Recruiting? Okay, fairly good. Let's do something other than economical directly, at least. So we don't need the West Wall yet. Mutually beneficial, 7 days. Almost yet. Autobahn, 42 days. Infrastructure. That's good. But like I said, I'm trying to stay away from just doing that. That's air bases. Let's look down here, That's nice. Those are sort of nice passenger. Let's do this. Okay, well, we're gonna get oil filled up in a while, but not yet. So more factories. now they're arguing about agreeing with each other. Okay. Now the two divisions. They just have one weak division there, but since these guys are still battling these other guys, it's giving us an advantage here. Oh, we should, yeah, let's, gamer is talking too much. And yes, do realize, I know I talk too much and don't play well. But I try to be entertaining. Okay, okay, let's have a smaller, like this, and let's split the air wing. I want like 60 fighters. See if we can get them down to here. And tactical bombers. I like tactical bombers. Can we send all of these down here? Yes, we should have done this before. Get some air experience grinding in as well. Okay. You. Oh, I guess we could have come here. Yeah, let's move to here. Let's move again to here. You do close air support. You, now that you're here, you just select that one. You come up here and you go after fighters and bombers to control these airspace. Now, when we look here, we should be able to see. Well, we have sometimes air support, and they have enemy air superiority, so that will help us out, as well as start grinding up more air experience as well. And I guess we may also, we can do a, as Arno said to do before, hadn't done it yet, send an attaché down there, so that we'll get even more. I know I could send resources, but I don't know. Equipment. I think we're already getting more experience. Okay, bases on two fronts, good. Which we can also see about an air theorist. Close air support. Lose favor, if we will. Same daily gain. Let's do that here. Oh, and we have enough for another. Okay, no propaganda, large-scale propaganda. Weekly war support. Well, we're not really doing any war. But we can get war support up, I guess. Let's do that. That's not using up all of our points, but just some of them. Select a national focus. Okay. Bases to France. Yes, good. Aeronautic funding, but we'll come back to that. Okay. Smelters, but we also get a lot more, more iron and coal. Some tungsten, which we won't have to invest in. Yeah. Carbon, yeah. Let's do this after my horrid experience earlier. Well, I think we're going to end this episode, not the live stream, but this episode here. I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. See you next time for more, yes, more hearts. So